Welcome to the Nourish to Thrive podcast, faith-forward, science-backed strategies for women who want more energy, less weight, and real answers. I'm your host, Tanya Pennington-Miller, a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and functional blood chemistry specialist with a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition. If you're tired of feeling dismissed by your doctor, confused by your labs, and stuck in survival mode, you're in the right place. Here, we simplify the science, we get to the root, and we anchor it all in truth. Because God made your body to heal and thrive, not just survive. It just needs the right kind of support and less noise. Hello, my friend. Welcome into the Nourish to Thrive podcast. I am so glad you're back with me today for season 2. I'm so excited. Now, I know I mentioned in the last episode that I would be taking a couple of weeks off, but the truth is I was just too excited to get season 2 started. So I found some time in my schedule, and I'm really glad I did because I've got some really good stuff lined up for you this month. All of June, we're doing a 4-part series that I'm calling Sleep Metrics: what to track, what it means, and what to do about it. So we're going to go deeper than the basics here. This series is going to be for the woman who's already paying attention to her health, maybe already wearing a wearable, whether that's an Oura ring, a Garmin, an Apple Watch, or something similar to those, and really wants to understand what her data is telling her. So if that's you, then you are exactly in the right place. So in the last episode, I mentioned that my daughter was about to turn 2, and she has now turned 2. And I've been thinking about that a lot this week, not just because 2 years have gone by faster than I can even explain, but because her arrival is honestly one of the most significant examples in my own life of what it is that we're going to be talking about in this series. When I was pregnant with her, I was 42. So I got pregnant at 42, had her at 43. And during that pregnancy, I was tracking my HRV, my heart rate variability. And that's what today's episode is going to be about. And I was tracking it because I just have always tracked it. And I just remember watching my HRV like drop into the low 20s. I mean, I'm telling you, like 21, 22 for, so much of my pregnancy. And there's part of that did make complete sense, because pregnancy is such a significant load on the body. And I'm sure my age had even more to do with that. But here's what was really interesting to me, because I had also tracked my HRV many years earlier when I was deep in adrenal exhaustion, and the numbers were almost identical. So, 2 very different seasons in life, same signal from the body. Both of them telling me the same thing. Your nervous system is working really hard right now, Tanya, and it doesn't have a lot of reserve. And that's the power of HRV. It's not this number that we should be trying to chase or optimize, but it's a window into what our nervous system is actually doing. And today I just want to open up that window for you, because I think once you understand what HRV is really measuring, it's going to change the way you see your data. And I think more importantly, the way that you understand your body. So most women who are tracking their HRV are looking at that number. I think they're looking at that number the same way they look at a grade on a test, right? Like high is good, low is bad. If it's up, I did something right. If it's down, I must have done something wrong. And I understand why we think that way, because that's how it's marketed. But HRV is really not a performance score. It's not a grade. It's not a punishment for, staying up too late or having a glass of wine. HRV is communication. It's your autonomic nervous system telling you something about your current state of regulation, of recovery, of resilience. And when you start reading it that way, it becomes one of the most useful and honest pieces of data that you have access to. So let's start at the beginning, because I want to make sure the foundation is solid before we go any further. So let's talk about what HRV actually is. Your heart rate variability is the variation in time between your heartbeats. And I want to make sure that lands correctly, because I think most people hear heart rate and assume we're talking about beats per minute, but HRV is very different from that. It's not how fast your heart is beating. It's measuring the variability, the slight differences in timing between each individual beat. This is not information that you can get simply by measuring your heart rate. So if you think of it this way, if your heart beats at exactly the same interval every single time, like a perfectly timed metronome, that's actually not a sign of good health. That kind of rigid and unchanging rhythm is a sign that your nervous system has lost its flexibility. It's a sign of a system under stress. A healthy heart, a regulated nervous system, actually has more variability. The intervals between beats should shift slightly. So, expanding and contracting in response to your breath, to your movement, to your environment, that responsiveness is what HRV is measuring. And the more variability you have, the more adaptable your nervous system is. So, we have two branches to our autonomic nervous system. We have our sympathetic and our parasympathetic state. And to really understand HRV, you have to really understand both branches because this is where the real story lives. Your sympathetic nervous system is your accelerator. It's your fight or flight response. So it speeds things up. It mobilizes energy. It prepares you to respond to a perceived threat. Whether that threat is a saber-toothed tiger chasing you, whether it's a stressful meeting, a skipped meal, a hard workout, a 2 a.m. wake up that won't let you fall back to sleep, your body sees all of those things the same. And then your parasympathetic state, your parasympathetic nervous system is your break. It's your rest and digest, your recovery mode. It slows things down. This is what allows your body to repair, to restore, to process. This is where true healing happens. And here is what I want you to hold on to for this entire series. The lower your HRV, the harder time your body has moving from your sympathetic state into your parasympathetic state. You get stuck in that accelerator mode. You stay in this low grade state of mobilization, even when nothing is threatening you, even when you're lying still, even when you're trying to sleep. And then the higher your HRV, the more easily your body can shift between the two. So you can respond to stress when you need to and then come back down. You can recover. You have what I would call nervous system flexibility. And this is why HRV matters so much, especially for the women that I work with, because so many of them are living in a body that has been in a sympathetic state for so long. Like it has actually forgotten how to downshift. And the body simply can't heal or lose weight or regulate hormones or sleep deeply when it's in that state. The sympathetic nervous system and deep restoration cannot coexist. So let's talk about what low HRV is actually telling you. When your HRV is low, it means that your nervous system is carrying a heavy load and it doesn't have a lot of reserve left over. And that load can come from a lot of different places. It can come from physical stress like overtraining, undereating, poor sleep. It can come from metabolic stress like blood sugar swings, like inflammation or nutrient depletion. It can come from emotional stress. It can come from hormonal shifts, like the ones that happen during perimenopause, that happen during postpartum, or just any season of significant change. So spiritual stress, carrying too much for too long without enough rest, without enough restoration. All of those things can show up in your HRV because all of them affect your nervous system. And your nervous system doesn't separate them into categories the way that we do, or the way that we think it would or should. Like it just registers the total load. And this is why my HRV, looked so similar during adrenal exhaustion and during pregnancy at 42, 43 years old. Again, two very different causes, but the same downstream signal. My body was working hard and it was honest about it. So what affects HRV in women specifically? There's a few things worth naming here that are particularly relevant for women over 35, women over 40. because they don't always come up in the general HRV conversation. Surprise, surprise. So first, hormones influence HRV directly. Progesterone, when it's in the optimal range, has a very calming effect on the nervous system. It helps to support our parasympathetic tone. So when progesterone drops, as it does in perimenopause, namely during our luteal phase of our cycle, this is when we might notice our HRV dropping too. It's not a coincidence. It's the hormonal environment affecting our nervous system's ability to regulate. Second, cortisol rhythm is really important here too. So when the diurnal rhythm is just off, it disrupts the parasympathetic recovery that should happen during sleep. This is one of the most common reasons that I see low HRV in women who say that they're sleeping. Like they might be sleeping 7 or 8 hours, but they're still waking up exhausted. Their body's not actually recovering overnight, and their HRV is reflecting that. And then third is blood sugar instability. This is a significant driver. So every time your blood sugar drops overnight and cortisol has to come back in to bring it up, that's a sympathetic activation. It will suppress your HRV and disrupt your sleep architecture, which we're going to talk more about in episode 2 of this series. So make sure you come back next week. So what do you actually do with this information? Because I never want to give you data without giving you a direction. First, if you're tracking your HRV, I want you to shift your relationship with that number. I want you to stop reading it as a grade. I want you to start reading it as a check-in. So when your HRV is lower than your normal baseline, the question is not, what did I do wrong? I want the question to become, what is my nervous system carrying right now? What does it need? What is my body communicating back to me? And sometimes the answer is more rest. Sometimes it's more food, specifically enough protein and fat earlier in the day to stabilize your blood sugar overnight. Sometimes it's less intensity in your workouts for a season. It doesn't have to be forever, but for where you're at right now. Sometimes it's addressing emotional or relational load that you have normalized and that you've stopped counting as stress. And second, the things that consistently support HRV over time really are not complicated, but they do require consistency. And you've heard me talk about these things before. Getting morning light exposure within that first 30 to 60 minutes of waking up really helps to set your circadian rhythm and helps to support healthy cortisol patterns, which in turn supports your HRV. We're going to talk more about that in episode 3 when we get to circadian rhythm. Okay, so eating enough, especially at breakfast, especially not skipping breakfast, helps to reduce that cortisol burden overnight, and it supports better glucose stability during sleep. Strategic strength training, which I love, which I am hugely supportive of, rather than high intensity chronic cardio. Okay, resistance training done with recovery in mind tends to really support HRV well. Chronic overtraining is going to suppress it. Okay, even if that's with strength training, okay? We have to make sure we're getting our recovery. And then we have our nervous system practices. So slow, extended exhales. These are going to activate the vagus nerve and shift you into that parasympathetic state. So you can do box breathing. You can do gentle walking in the evening time, reducing your screen exposure before sleep. These aren't like soft wellness suggestions. Like they all help to determine your HRV because they're speaking directly to the system that generates it. So, and really focus on when you're doing those breathing exercises, the main key is that you want to make sure that you are exhaling slower than you inhaled. So if you're to inhale, let's say for 5 seconds, inhale through your nose for 5 seconds. When you exhale, you want to exhale through your mouth and make sure it takes 10 seconds. And a good way to do that is kind of like pretend you're blowing out through a straw so you don't just like release all of the air at once. In for 5, out for 10. It's that extending that exhale is what's going to get you into that parasympathetic state. And then sleep quality itself, especially the amount of deep sleep and REM sleep that you're getting, which again is exactly what we're going to cover in episode 2, okay? Because your HRV and your sleep architecture are deeply connected, each one affecting the other. And I'm looking forward to getting into that conversation with you next week, because it's less about, although hours of sleep do matter, it's less about hours of sleep and it's more about what kind of sleep are we getting during those hours. Okay. I just want to close this teaching portion of today's episode with something that I keep coming back to, and I think it matters more than it might seem on the surface. HRV is, at its core, a measure of flexibility, of how well your body can respond, how well it can adapt, and how well it can recover. And I think there's something really worth sitting with in that, because God designed your nervous system with that same intention, not rigidity, not relentless drive in one direction, but responsiveness, the ability to move, to shift, and to come back. There's a reason that rest is woven into the design of creation from the very beginning, not because rest is earned after enough effort, but because rhythm, the movement between output and restoration, is how living things are meant to function. Your nervous system is not the exception in that design. It is one of the clearest expressions of it. So when your HRV is low and your body is stuck in the accelerator mode, I want you to read that as an invitation to come back to the rhythm that your body was designed for, to let restoration be as intentional as your effort is. Psalm 23 doesn't say he drove his people to green pastures. It says he led them there and he made them lie down. There's something in that I don't want us to miss. Rest is not a reward for finishing. It's part of the design. It is built into how we were made to move through the world. Your nervous system already understands this. Your HRV is just asking you to catch up to what your body has known all along. If today's episode opened something for you and you're starting to see your body's signals through a different lens, I want you to know there's more where this came from. This is exactly the kind of work we do inside my programs, inside my academy, taking the data, connecting it to the root cause, and building a plan that actually makes sense for your body in your season. If you want to stay connected, make sure that you are subscribed so that you don't miss an episode. And if you have any questions that you would love to hear me address on this podcast, especially for my Q&A episodes that we're starting, I would love for you to send them to me on Instagram. You can find me at Tanya.Pennington.Miller. I love hearing from you. And your questions genuinely help to shape what it is that I bring to this show. So thank you for spending time with me today, and I will see you right back here next week, sister. That's it for today on the Nourish to Thrive podcast. If you found value here, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or send it to someone who's walking a similar path. Keep showing up, keep asking questions, and know that healing is possible, especially when you trust the one who designed your body to heal. Until next time, stay rooted in truth and nourished in grace.